Hi, Peter Helms here, Bigger Transformations, and as always, I made a couple great discoveries today. One I want to share with you, and I had thought about it before, is the glutes becoming so tight, they start inhibiting the femoral movement pattern, and they're not absorbing impact just like the way that we think they are, and they're not firing. Again, if you think of the hips in the front becoming too tight, they're going to cause miscommunication with the glutes, add that in with tightness of the legs, and there's just a lot of miscommunication going on. But as I already did earlier a little bit on my own, is kind of loosen up the glutes. I'll show you a little quick preview. I did it mostly from a standing position, kind of getting right in to that kind of anchor solution. If you think of the glutes, they don't come straight across. They go down and they kind of wrap, and that's kind of most of our muscles. They're kind of almost a slight curvature to them. Very few of them kind of go in a straight striation, especially when we're getting in and around the joints areas. So the glute max comes down and kind of attaches almost below the greater trochanter. And most of you will probably kind of notice right around that area, it's really hard, dense tissue. Almost kind of feels like more bone out there than it feels like muscle. And it's usually a large area of it. So my left is different than my right. Like kind of most people's, my right was always kind of pushing. So if anything, my right's kind of pushed forward a little bit too much, where my left is pulled back. A lot of that because I pushed with my right, pulled with my left. So I kind of get stuck in these positions, if you will. So I don't know right or wrong, but just kind of getting in around where the glute starts or attaches, however you want to kind of think of this, because if you push or pull from either end, right? So I'm just going to kind of get in there and just kind of hold. The more you can kind of get into a hinge position, if you will, the better this will kind of work. And I'm just going to kind of hold it a little bit. I already kind of did this for a little bit prior to the video, so I can feel the tissue starting to move. But now what I wanted to do is, I was having some trouble with the front, trying to get the vastus lateralis, sartorius, TFL to loosen, because again, they travel right through this area too. And if you think of your glute med, it should be abducting the leg, but if the hip is too kind of turned in or too tight, if you will, now my abductor is going that way, and it really can't fire or do its job. So again, if something's really compressed and tight, we think it's been doing the job that it's supposed to, and then it's weak and it can't, but we're not realizing that the muscle tissue is so tight that it can't perform its job. So now I can kind of get in here and start to loosen. You kind of might notice what a lot of us kind of refer to as cables throughout the body. And what I'm finding with these pieces or muscle fibers is they're going the length of the muscle. I haven't found any that stop short. Okay, they all travel the whole distance, end to end. And again, if you think of a cable, a wire cable, it doesn't really have any kind of give to it. So when these muscle fibers become that tight, they're not operating the way that we think they are. They're not shortening and contracting like they usually do. Okay, they're probably kind of pinning us up in one position, maybe holding us in a different one, because we tend to kind of sit in a lot of the same position. Okay, we're either kind of standing or we're sitting. So our muscles are either my hamstrings are lengthened. Same thing with my quadriceps. Okay, unless I'm coming up into a hinge position and sitting. Now I'm kind of going into a flex position with the hamstrings. We're just not getting big enough movements enough times. Again, walking, running, you're minimally moving the joints. Again, it's better than nothing. But a lot of people I know can't really kind of squat well. What I mean by that is they can't hold kind of a proper position without kind of losing balance. And we kind of really need to start working on that flexibility. In order to do so, we need to really start getting in and kind of loosening up that tissue so that we can perform better movement patterns. And you also start to notice when you start doing this, you start to have better muscle fullness. The muscles look better. I had another great find earlier about the shoulder complex. Kind of very similar to the glute if you think about it. And I'll share that one with you on a different video. But what I wanted to kind of hit really quickly is kind of this piece that I've been struggling with on both sides. The tightness right up in that hip crest, because again, I realized my hips were kind of pulled in too much. So now my femurs, I couldn't move. Okay? If I'm out here, much better movement. Mobility, I can pull in the core. Again, it's not that our muscles are by any means becoming weak in the sense that we need to work them. They're becoming weak in the sense that they're becoming so tight and they're kind of stuck in these positions and we can't use them anymore. But once we start kind of releasing the tissue, allowing freer, better movement, we can start doing much more with it. I went for a swim the other day, much better movement pattern. Even noticing not as great today. I did a video earlier where I started the video, I could only touch the floor with my kind of fingertips. By the end of the video, I had my palms on it. It was only maybe a 20-minute clip too, just showing how tight our hips get. And when I'm realizing, and I kind of knew this, I've been focusing on the hamstrings, because again, think of the big prime movers for the legs. We got hamstrings, glute max. Those are the ones that are, hamstring doesn't even connect to the femur, so we got that one's bypassing the femur. Then you have the glute max, which is connecting to the hip, and then up to the greater trochanter is kind of just below it. So it's kind of abducting, huge stabilizer, okay, kind of power muscle. But again, if it's not, doesn't have the same flexibility as it used to, I noticed when I was walking, I couldn't quite activate it the way that I wanted to, and I shouldn't have to activate it. I should just be able to kind of think about it, and it should just be firing and doing its job. And that's what kind of, one of the things that prompted me to do this, is I realized over the years, I've become too focused on trying to fire certain muscles and get them to do their job. And in all reality, I should just be able to perform the movement pattern, and they should be able to do the job on their own. And as the years have progressed, I tried to fix my right hip. It's kind of what prompted me to do this too, is my right hip has got worse and worse through the years with exercise. And finally I was catching for my daughter, and I'm able to get back down into a catcher stance and sit there perfectly fine and comfortable. Where I don't know if a couple months ago I would have been able to do that. I think my right hip would have been too tight to allow me to get down there, and it would have been kind of maybe too much pressure on my knees. I don't notice any pressure on my knees anymore. I can sit straight up and down in a deep squat. Sometimes taking a little bit to warm up. But again, by systematically doing this, okay, so one muscle is going to release another muscle is going to release another. So, by kind of hitting those glutes, it allows me to move the femur a little bit better. Now I can go to the front. Same thing, kind of those TFLs, or TFL, vastus lateralis, may not be quite attached to the femur itself, where it's kind of attached to the hip crest, but you'll notice if you start to do this, how tight and how much kind of scar tissue is really there, and how flexible you can come kind of relatively quickly by doing this in a systematic order. I'm just kind of going back and forth from the hips while I kind of explain this. And then usually what I'll get in there and do afterwards is kind of palpate the tissue a little bit and see what's moving, so I can notice again big adhesion right over here. So here's my hip crest, here's kind of where my greater trochanter should be. Again, I can notice all that scar tissue right around it, so it's inhibiting the movement. Again, if you think about it, glute med starts at the top of the hip, comes down, attaches over it. Kind of what's its job? It abducts the leg and it's supposed to stabilize. But what is it doing? It's pulling. So there's nothing out there that doesn't say that can not start to pull the femur up. If you think about it, attachment, what's it going to do? Start to shorten. Then you have kind of same thing right up where that greater trochanter is. You get those deep gluteal muscles. that attach it pretty much kind of do the same thing as the max. But again, if they become shortened, now they're not really contracting. They're kind of just staying in a certain state. And, you know, we can go through our movements, but because we're so limited on our range of motions, we kind of slowly lose them if we're not working on trying to regain new ones. And you just can't force the muscles when they're too tight. I did it for years. And you can kind of think that you have something going on, like, all right, I feel better. I did it hundreds of times. I'm like, oh, this is it. And this is why I've never done anything like this before. Because all too often, I thought I had the answer and I didn't. And, you know, now with enough years of research and understanding about the body and kind of going through this process myself, and kind of videotaping it and showing everybody that it can be done. And we just got to kind of start looking at the body a little bit differently and get us back to that so-called anatomically correct position. And then all those things that we've been doing are really going to start to pay off in terms of movement. But our exercise ideally should be kind of based more around us learning how to move better. Just kind of strengthening the muscles that are already kind of strong, if you will. And we all do it. I did it, you know, certain exercises I like, so those are the ones I'm going to go and do because I feel better, I'm stronger at them. As opposed to the ones you might not want to do because you don't feel as strong, and they're harder. And they're harder because we're tighter. You know, once you really kind of start loosening up this tissue, and you'll be amazed at how much better you feel. I'm more flexible now. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again now than I was 20 years ago. And it's all just by kind of methodically kind of loosening this tissue. I can't stress enough, kind of glutes, hips, this whole region. The more you do it, the faster it goes. Add in a little bit of stretching. And, you know, just kind of look to see whatever the tightest muscle is. Whatever the tightest muscle is, that's the muscle that's doing its job on every movement pattern. You know, you may think a certain muscle is performing more of a movement on a twist and a rotation, but, you know, I could be turning with my adductors. I could be pushing with my hamstrings. I could be pushing with my glute. I mean, there's so many muscles that go into any kind of movement pattern, regardless of what it is. Maybe I'm not strong on the side, so maybe I'm just kind of pulling myself across, and we can all kind of disguise our movements and make them look good. I knew that for years, watching people exercise and move. People are great at disguising things, and not until you really kind of get in there and be like, all right, well, what is really fine? What's holding me up? I could feel my ankle collapsing a little bit. I gotta get a little better at stabilizing. But how am I going to be able to do that unless I loosen the tissue to allow the gastroc to pick that up, because, you know, my knee's wanting to kind of come in a little bit. And then again, let me take it a little bit further, coming up into the hip. Hip's too tight, causing the knee to go valgus. So now the gastroc, and you kind of start to see the dilemma of what happens. And same thing, even if my core might not be stable. Usually I'm wearing sneakers when I do this, I've done it a while. Now you start doing one of these, okay? Because your legs are too tight, so you're trying to balance up here. And that's how we kind of lose our balance a lot, is our muscles are not supple enough through the hips to absorb, to give us that sense of balance. And then we got to try and fix it up here. And every action needs an equal and opposite reaction, meaning if you do something fast, another muscle's got to pick it up that fast. So by learning how to do these things really slow, we can then start to feel more, understand more what's kind of going on. Just wanted to share that, guys, with you real quick about the hips. I'd been working on the glutes kind of more from a stance in this position. Really kind of almost kind of targeting the hamstrings a little bit more. But I kind of now realize, depending on where the hip is sitting, it's going to dictate how tight the hamstrings are and whatnot. So hopefully this was helpful. I'll post a couple of the other ones that I did today, and more to come. All right.